So, even though last night's defeat against Brazil and our World Cup hopes are hanging by a thread, I thought it would be prudent to actually review Steve Clarke's entire time in charge of the Scotland national team from when he was appointed after Alex McLeish in 2019 right through to now, which has seen him be in charge of some of the best moments I've seen in a Scotland shirt in terms of being a fan, and also some of the lowest of the low with how we've approached certain games. But if you are new around here, first of all, please consider checking out some of the other content on the channel, liking and subscribing. But without further ado, let's get into a breakdown of each year of Steve Clarke's time in charge. So we're going to start off, of course, with 2019 when he took charge after Alex McLeish got the sack, and then at the end of the video we'll do a little bit of a recap of the amount of goals scored, some of the worst results, and a big one, which is how well we did at major tournaments. So in 2019, all Steve Clarke had to do was go through the Euro 2020 qualifiers. No other games were played under Steve Clarke in 2019. His first game in charge was a home game against Cyprus where we won 2-1. You know, still implementing his style, which we all know and love to this day, of course, but you would think that a game against Cyprus at home should probably be more comfortable the vast majority of the time. A 3-0 loss to Belgium. This was back when Belgium actually still had their golden generation kicking around for a little bit as well. A 2-1 loss to Russia before they done some stuff that got them kicked out of European competitions. A 4-0 loss to Belgium at home. Doesn't really matter who you're playing. A 4-0 loss at home is not really acceptable, but he was getting some rope at this point because of how poor Alex McLeish was. We then get back-to-back 4-0 losses, with a 4-0 loss away from home to Russia. Not looking good for his first year in charge. But then, of course, we rectify things with a 6-0 win over San Marino. I mean, that's always impressive when you get a 6-0 win over San Marino, isn't it? At least we didn't concede a goal. The only game in 2020 that we didn't concede a goal, or the 2020 qualifiers even. Another 2-1 win over Cyprus, this time away from home. And then a 3-1 win over Kazakhstan, which rectified the result that Alex McLeish got away from home. We ended up finishing third in the qualifiers that time around, but we had the back door of the Nations League to go through this time. So, moving on to his 2020. Now, we did, of course, have the playoffs, which we'll get to, but the only reason we were in the playoffs, it wasn't actually down to Steve Clarke, because that was actually down to Alex McLeish, believe it or not. He was the one that got us there. But in terms of the Nations League B that time around, a 1-1 draw with Israel. I mean, we play Israel a lot. It's never an entertaining game for the most part, apart from maybe one outing, which we'll get to very soon. A 2-1 win over Czechia, who would have been the Czech Republic at that point, of course, away from home. So that's a decent result, especially back then. A 1-0 win over Slovakia at home. Another 1-0 win over Czechia at home. A 1-0 loss to Slovakia, and then a 1-0 loss to Israel. So a bit of an up and down Nations League campaign with some good results in there. But obviously the big talking point of 2020 was the fact that we managed to get to the Euros, the very first major tournament we'd made it to since France 98. A 0-0 draw with Israel, beating them 5-3 on penalties, and then a 1-1 draw with Serbia, which in fairness to Steve Clarke and Scotland, that would have been a sucker punch if we didn't make it in that game. We were excellent on the night, and then just a lapse in concentration at the end with a header to go in. Where credit's due, whenever it goes to him, I will give him the credit. We did deserve to win that game. The Israel one was a torrid watch, in fairness. Penalties could have gone either way, but we did deserve to beat Serbia in that occasion. 2021, and one of Steve Clarke's busiest years in charge of Scotland, and some results that are remembered really fondly, of course, and some results that are not remembered so fondly. So, starting off with the friendlies in the bottom corner there, as you can see, we had some friendlies before the Euros, if you remember, where we drew 2-2 with the Netherlands. Jack Hendry in that game scored a brilliant long-range strike, and I remember that game for Memphis Depay diving in a friendly to win a free kick. Very weird. And then a 1-0 win over Luxembourg. You would want it to be a lot more convincing than that, to be honest. The Euros itself, of course, we know how that went. We played 2 games at Hampden, and those were embarrassments. We conceded from the halfway line against Czechia, who we had beaten a couple of times in the Nations League beforehand, so it was a bit disappointing that we never took anything from that game. Followed up with a trip to Wembley, where we did draw 0-0 with England, and that one actually, again, credit where credit's due, we gave that one a right good go, which is rare against big teams under Steve Clarke, and we could have won the game if it had been kinder to us on the day. England also, of course, could have won the game, but, decent performance there, just the result wouldn't be enough to see us through, as we then lose 3-1 at home to Croatia, and that goal that we score in that major tournament of the Euros is a clean strike, which is something that we'll get to later on, where we don't tend to do that in major tournaments. Callum McGregor with the goal against Croatia just before half-time to make it 1-1, which I remember at the time thinking that was the worst thing that actually could have happened, because we needed to make major changes at half-time. Callum McGregor scored right before half-time, and Steve Clarke made no changes as a result. On to the World Cup qualifier, though. So we did draw 2-2 with Austria. John McGinn scored an incredible overhead kick improvisation in that game. A 1-1 draw with Israel, the old foe at this point. A 4-0 win over the Faroe Islands, which is to be expected at home. Potentially you could even be looking to get some more. A 2-0 loss away from home to Denmark. That was not a great performance. A 1-0 win at home to Moldova. I think it was an early goal in that game, and that one kind of just petered out. Not a great performance. A 1-0 win away from home to Austria. A really, really terrible penalty from Lyndon Dykes that ended up squeezing through, and we managed to get the win there. A 3-2 win over Israel, which myself and my friends were actually in attendance at this game. It was a brilliant game to watch from the stands, where we go behind twice in the game, really poorly on both occasions, although one was a really good free kick in fairness. John McGinn scored a brilliant goal in this game. Dykes with a high foot that did end up going in, that was disallowed at first, but then VAR gave it, and then Scott McTominay scores his first Scotland goal in this game to win that game 3-2. That was an excellent game to be a part of. A 1-0 win away from home with the Faroe Islands. Bog standard. 2-0 to Moldova, and I think Craig Gordon might have saved a penalty in that game as well, actually. And then the 2-0 win over Denmark, obviously a massive night where we secured a home World Cup playoff as a result of that. A brilliant performance against Denmark as well. It could have been even more. Again, credit where it's due. That one was really good. And that sums up Steve Clarke's 2021 record. Moving on now to 2022, where it was just friendlies, a World Cup playoff, and then Nations League B again, where again some of it was good, some of it was really bad. Starting off with the friendlies, a 1-1 with Poland. Friendlies are friendlies, but you would like to get decent results in them if you can, and give people a chance to shine. Austria 2, Scotland 2, and then Turkey 2, Scotland 1. So a year where we don't win any games in friendlies. And then, of course, the disappointment of the World Cup playoff, where it had been postponed because of the events going on in Ukraine. And then by the time we played them, we had a bunch of key players being injured. But even so, at home, you would have expected us to be able to beat Ukraine. And it didn't happen. We went 2-0 down in the game. We were huffing and puffing. Callum McGregor ended up scoring a goal that got us back into the game, and then we pushed a lot of men forward, and then Ukraine caught us on the counter, which happens a few times for Scotland, it seems. And in this occasion, it was just a poor result. You would have expected us to get through this game, and then Ukraine actually didn't end up making the World Cup, if I remember rightly. I think they lost to Wales in the next round, so disappointing. Then in the Nations League, a 2-0 win over Armenia, and then the 3-0 loss to Ireland was kind of like the first part where I kind of wanted Steve Clarke out. In fairness, I wanted him out after that game. That one was really poor. We do then beat Armenia 4-1 away from home. We get revenge on Ukraine with a 3-0 win, and we deserved to win that game entirely. The Ireland one, not a great performance, but we did manage to get it 2-1 again. Disappointing to not perform great against Ireland twice. At that point in time, we were considered to be the stronger team, and we didn't make it look that way. And then a 0-0 draw with Ukraine. So that sums up Steve Clarke's 2022. On to 2023, and arguably one of the highlights of Steve Clarke's time in charge as Scotland boss. A 3-0 win over Cyprus, which despite the scoreline was a really flat atmosphere. I was at that game. But the big one was the 2-0 win over Spain. I was at that one as well, and that was an excellent atmosphere and a really solid performance against a Spain team who that is still their last competitive loss in 90 minutes. Again, credit where it's due. Brilliant performance. The Norway one... the Haaland penalty was questionable, and then we go in the scenes with the 2 goals in less than 2 minutes. Brilliant time to be a Scotland fan. It was. Sometimes the football wasn't great to look at, but some of the moments that we were getting, it was brilliant. A 2-0 win over Georgia, where we got that massive rain delay. That one was a really good one to be a part of as well, despite that. A 3-0 win over Cyprus as well. A 2-0 loss to Spain, which, of course, if you remember rightly, we did take the lead in the game with a Scott McTominay free kick, which I still believe to this day was wrongfully disallowed, and who knows what happens if that one is allowed to stand. A 2-2 draw with Georgia, and then a 3-3 draw with Norway. By that point, we were kind of in celebratory mode, if you like, because we had qualified for the Euros. And then 2 friendlies, which didn't go our way at all. A 3-1 loss to England, which is never nice, and a 4-1 loss to France. But overall, probably one of the better years that Steve Clarke was in charge. 2024, another major tournament and a disappointing year overall. If we go to the friendlies, 4-0 loss to the Netherlands this time instead of a 2-2 draw, not great. The 1-0 loss to Northern Ireland was a horrible, horrible performance. 2-0 over Gibraltar, you'd expect to be beating them by more, and 2-2 with Finland as well. Funnily enough, we got some glimpses of some talent that would be coming to the Scottish Premiership, and Ant-Man, who contributed to some goals, and Sinisalo was in goals. He made a brilliant save to stop Tommy Conway from giving us the lead in that game, I remember. We get to the Euros, we're all excited, and then we get destroyed in the opening game by Germany, 5-1. We take the lead against Switzerland in the second game, and then Anthony Ralston and Grant Hanley decide to have a howler between each other, and Shaqiri, in fairness to him, scores a brilliant goal. We draw that game 1-1. And then against Hungary, we huffed and puffed. And even though we got caught on the counter very late on, obviously one of the big talking points was no penalty given to Stuart Armstrong, which to me was a Stonewall penalty. But if you don't make the mistakes in the other games, then you're not relying on that last game. And then we get sucker punched at the end with Hungary getting us on the counter attack. Another disappointing major tournament. Out of 2 at this point in time. And then Nations League A, our first experience of the top one. We lose 3-2 at home to Poland in a really poor performance. The performance away from home at Portugal, we actually took the lead, and Cristiano Ronaldo scored late on to make it 2-1. Okay performance in that one, in fairness. Poor performance against Croatia when we lost 2-1. Decent performance against Portugal for the 0-0. If Croatia don't get a red card in that game, do we beat them 1-0? Probably not. And then we do manage to get a last-minute winner against Poland to give us a chance to fight for our Nations League A place in the next again year. So an up-and-down year with Steve Clarke in 2024, but it has to be said, mostly downs. 2025, we started off with the Nations League A playoff against Greece, where we fluked a 1-0 win away from home. We were dominated in the game, and then it came back to bite us in the second game, where we lose 3-0 at home and got relegated from Nations League A, and rightfully so. At the time, we were terrible. Then destroyed in a friendly by Iceland, where Kieran Slicker didn't have his best performance, let's put it that way, but the whole team were poor. A 4-0 win over Liechtenstein, but it's to be expected when you're playing that level of opposition. And then we get to the World Cup qualifiers, which we all remember really fondly, of course. A 0-0 draw with Denmark. We could have maybe snuck something from the game as well. 2-0 against Belarus. That one was fairly routine. 3-1 against Greece, which was an absolute robbery. Greece dominated us in the game. But then we come away with a 3-1 win. Nobody's going to complain with that being the case, but Greece clearly held a grudge, as we'll see later on. 2-1 win against Belarus. A win's a win, but that was a very poor performance overall. 3-2 loss to Greece, and at that it could have been 3-3, in fairness to us. We came back into the game after going 3-0 down. However, Belarus managed to do us a favour and take points off of Denmark, which meant, of course, we could get that wonderful 4-2 win over them, which was a brilliant, brilliant game to watch. People have all gone back and watched the highlights, murals getting painted. Again, credit where it's due. A brilliant, brilliant result. We went for them from the first whistle, and then when Garandok came off, it was a little bit slack going forward at times, but we went for it. and we got our rewards. So 2025 as a whole started off really disappointingly with the Nations League playoff and the friendlies, but ended on a massive high with that World Cup qualification for the first time since 1998. Then on to 2026 so far. So we start off with a friendly against Japan, which they're a good side. They beat us 1-0. No really any complaints there. Ivory Coast, a mistake from the back line that led to a 1-0 there. Not a great performance. 4-1 against Curaçao. We obviously went 1-0 down, and then we got back into the game. They get a red card, and we just dominate it from there. Bolivia, that was one of the better friendly performances I've seen us put in, regardless of the level of opposition, in fairness. But then we didn't take any of it into the World Cup, where we do beat Haiti 1-0, but a really poor performance. 1-0 loss to Morocco, where we just sold it down the river from minute one. And then, of course, last night's performance against Brazil, where it was just really, really poor all around, especially from our bigger players. And we said that we learnt the lessons from the previous two Euros about sitting off and trying to wait for stuff to fall at our lap and wait for stuff to happen, and we didn't. And that's why I think Steve Clarke should walk away from the job, even though he's been given a 4-year extension. If he's got any dignity at all, he should be walking away, especially after the really, really ridiculous post-match interviews that he's done, just walking away from reporters like he's not interested. He's just an embarrassment at this point, and he needs to walk away. But in a little further bit of breakdown, here is a look at some teams that Scotland have scored 3 or more goals in a single game against in Steve Clarke's time in charge. And as you can see, apart from Denmark, Greece and Norway, and potentially Ukraine lumped in there as well, it's kind of teams that you'd be expecting to put that kind of level of goals past. Unfortunately, Haiti are not in that list. Otherwise, we could probably still be in a position where it's looking likely that we'd be getting to the next stage of the World Cup. And we still could if results go our way, but it's not looking likely at this stage. So it's been a problem at Scotland for a while. As you can see with that stat in front of you, we don't score enough goals. Moving on to the teams who have scored 3+ in a single game against us in that time. Brazil, of course, last night. Iceland, which is an embarrassment. Greece twice. Poland, Germany obviously destroyed us. Netherlands, France, England, Norway, Belgium twice. Russia, Croatia, Ukraine and Ireland. Now, there are some teams in there, of course, that, can put a lot of goals past a lot of teams at any time. However, there are 1 or 2 teams in there that it's a little bit embarrassing to have conceded 3+ goals in a single game against. But then we get to the key one, his record at major tournaments. Now, the media will always go, oh, well, he managed to get Scotland to 3 major tournaments, including back-to-back Euros. But this is the record when we get there. Now, of course, we aren't officially knocked out of this World Cup yet, but it's looking likely at this point. And then even if we did get through, probably only 1 more game at the World Cup. But as it stands, 1 win at major tournaments, and it's the Haiti one. And, we're expected to win that one. 2 draws, 6 defeats. What happened to being hard to beat? Do you know what I mean? If he's going to set up defensively and not go for it, to be beaten 6 times out of 9 is just atrocious. 4 goals scored. Now, I said about the clean goal earlier on with the Croatia game, Callum McGregor. That's the only clean goal we've scored at the tournaments. An own goal against Germany in the 5-1 defeat, a deflected effort from Scott McTominay, and a deflected effort from John McGinn is our goal tally at major tournaments. 4 goals in 3 major tournaments. Terrible. 16 conceded. He's setting up to play defensively and catch on the counter, and we're conceding 16 goals. What on earth is that? And of course, our best result being Haiti, and our worst result being a 5-1 win. A 5-1 win for Germany. If we didn't get that Haiti win, our best result, I'd have had to have picked it from one of our 2 draws. Switzerland probably would have been the pick because we scored in that game. So, awful, awful, awful record at major tournaments. He might have been able to get us there 3 times, but when we get to the dance, he has been absolutely shocking. And as a summary there, that is his entire record as Scotland manager while he's been in charge. Hopefully that is the end of it as well, but I obviously can't see that being the case. The SFA would have to pay him a massive amount of money at this point to sack him, and I don't think he's the type of guy to walk away from a job even if it's what he's supposed to be doing. But 81 games, 38 wins, 14 draws and 29 losses. Now, you know, you can spin that one of two ways. You could say, well, in the 81 games in charge of Scotland, he has avoided defeat 52 times. But then you could also spin that to be the case of the 81 games in charge of Scotland. He's only won 38 of them. So, you know, you can spin that either way. 117 goals scored, but 105 goals conceded. So to be playing some of the nations that we've been playing against and not have a much better goal difference is not great, in my opinion. We've obviously struggled to score goals for a long, long time, and we need to do something to rectify that. But that is going to sum up Steve Clarke's time in charge of Scotland. Of course, my opinion is he should go. He should have gone well before this. What do you guys think? If you are new around here, please consider checking out some of the other content on the channel, liking and subscribing, and I'll catch you in the next one.